You ready?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I like to laugh when we start because it helps you relax, right? Okay. So the first question is always, what was the spiritual tradition in your home when you were growing up? And so tell us a little bit about how that started for you.
Well, there was really no spiritual tradition in my home growing up. I had loving, good parents, and we were raised very well. But we didn't have any formal tradition of prayer or worshiping God that I can remember. My dad was born as an orphan in Spain and raised in a Catholic orphanage. And when he later came to the United States, he would not accept any organized religion. So he never stepped inside of a church again in his life. Although he lived by what I would call Christian principles, that was not a part of our life. My mother had sung in 2 church choirs on Sunday mornings. I believe that was when she was in her late teens and early 20s. And I had 3 older brothers that I think went to Sunday school. That's what I remember hearing. But I was never enrolled in Sunday school or taken to church. I was kind of left to guide myself to my faith. And though I was a spoiled child as the only girl and the youngest one, I kind of was left to guide myself into my faith. So,
well, another thing that you talked about here, which I thought was interesting, was, well, just to kind of fill in the some of the gaps in the story a little bit that were interesting to me. Your father was raised in that Catholic orphanage in Avila in Spain, which is probably one of the most holy cities in Spain, because that's where Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross and other monastics were known to come together. So he kind of got a heavy dose.
Yes, San Juan de la Cruz.
Right.
There was a statue of him in the square in Fontiveros, his hometown.
Yeah. So, and if you've ever been to Avila, you know that the city is walled in. So not only was he in the Catholic school, but just the idea that you had to live in this walled in space, to me was intimidating. Stelly and I walked all the way around the whole city on the top of the wall. It's quite a journey. So, so I really like your story about how you kind of found your faith, and you talked about Bob a little bit. You want to share that story with us?
Yeah, well, so when I was about 12 years old, I did start attending the local Methodist church, but that was with my first crush, Ed Sloan, and his parents. And then they moved away. But I decided
Keep going.
Something fall off of me.
Yeah.
I decided to continue on at the church without Ed. And so I soon started attending the Methodist Youth Fellowship. And if some of you recall, we used to have a pilgrim fellowship here of youth. And, but I attended the Methodist Youth Fellowship. And there were lots of my friends in that group, probably one of the reasons I attended it. But there, amongst the people, was Bob Carey. And he became my second crush, but not right away. We were just good friends. And an incident that occurred about the time, I don't know if I was a junior or senior in high school, he told me how he had gone alone into the church to pray for his mother, who was very ill. And he was afraid she was going to die. And this left a great impression on me and really raised my estimation of this young man, and how, really deep he was, and he looked pretty good. Yeah, so he became the love of my life, as people here can attest to. And we spent 5 years being friends and courting, and then 66 plus years of marriage. And we had 5 wonderful children, 2 of whom are with us today, and a granddaughter, Stacy, and 2 in-law children, Terry and Steve. I really appreciate that. And there are some on Zoom. And anyhow, I don't know where am I?
You're ready for me to ask the next question.
Okay.
So we'll speed forward in time a little bit to where you were before you came to Ladera, and it sort of picks up the story with
Oh, yeah.
Bob in Michigan, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. So, well, before I came to Ladera, or we came to Ladera, we were in Claremont, California, but we moved here from Claremont in 1966. But I'd like to back up a little bit and tell how Bob went to the University of Michigan and graduated in early 1952. And he got his degree in chemical and metallurgical engineering, and was to start a job at Union Oil in California in June of that year. This was around January, February. And at that time, I was secretary to the Associate Dean of the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts at Michigan. And we had our first son, Robert, and that was 71 years ago last month. So you can see I'm a youngster. So where are we now?
Well, you were in Claremont prior to coming here.
Oh, yeah. So, we went to California. We came to California. We lived in Concord for a few years. And I started a babysitting cooperative. I think some of you know what those are or were. They were very handy, where there were 25 couples that actually belonged to our sitting club in Holbrook Heights. And I started that because I had a baby. Well, so I was later accused of having keen insight or foresight because I started it when I had one child, but I ended up with 5. And so that was something. But then we left Concord for Claremont, California, because Bob, in the meantime, had gotten into the aerospace industry, first in San Ramon, California, near Danville, and then down in Azusa. So while he was working at Azusa, we lived in Claremont, and for 3 years. And pretty soon, there was a flyby of Mars, and it didn't show any life on Mars. And that's what NASA and the Aerojet were really looking into at the time. He was actually working on a spaceship that would circle Mars. And so the aerospace industry kind of went downhill. And but soon a call came from someone that he had worked with at Aerojet in San Ramon, who was now working for a company in Palo Alto. And they needed someone to start up a new metallurgy lab. So he came to Palo Alto and started working for Beckman Instruments. And so he transitioned from first being in the oil industry to being in the aerospace industry. And now he was transitioning into medical research instruments. And that's where he spent the rest of his working days and loved every minute of it.
So I chose a couple of questions for Myrt that I was curious about, because, when someone's been around as long as her, she's seen a lot of things that a lot of us haven't seen, but she sees what we see now. And so I asked her 2 questions, that were big perspective kind of questions. One was, what's the most significant change she's seen in the world over the course of her life? And then, sort of related to that, I thought it might be, what is better now that was harder when she was younger?
Yeah.
So take your pick.
Well, my answer to both of them was communication, because I think that communication has really been a big breakthrough over the time that I've been on this earth. What's better now is that I've learned to text, and I'm on Facebook, and I can keep up with my large family. Well, even if it were a small family, I keep up with them, and I know kind of what's going on. And so one of the things I can do if I don't feel up to going to the grocery store, I can get on the computer and order from Instacart, and they will bring the groceries to my door or bring them into the kitchen. And one young woman even offered to put them away. What other things?
What was the harder part?
Yeah, well, there's so many things. So I have my Dick Tracy watch, and if I fall pretty hard, it'll ask me, "Are you okay?" And if I'm not okay, I can call my son Kent, who's nearby, or I can call a neighbor, or I can press a little button on here that I don't dare press now, because it calls 911. So now that's good communication. So yeah, that's why I chose, there's so many reasons.
So what is the most fun thing you like to do now?
Oh, well, the most fun thing that I have right now going on for me, more than ever, are what I call rainbow moments. And I'll be down at the Ladera Shopping Center walking around with my rollator, and after I've gotten my hair done, and I go get some coffee, and I'll run into somebody and we'll make friends. And some of you call these small world stories, but I call them rainbow moments because to me, they're really bright. And I know that God is at the helm of these stories. And I think they happen to all of us all the time. And we may not even realize why it's happening at the time it happens. But you may find out later, maybe years later, why it happened. So those are fun, and I love to relate them. Mm-hmm. I wish I had time to relate one.
Well, that's coffee hour.
Yeah, okay.
So then my other question was, is there anything left on your bucket list?
Oh, yeah. Well, left on my bucket list is to finish writing the life stories that I started way back in 2000. And I didn't take the class here with Sheila Dunnick, but I did at Menlo Park Library and then at Avenidas. And so she was a big guide in all this. And I know some of you took her class here at the church. And but I want to get those published sometime this year by the grace of God.
Okay, good.
But yeah.
Now we're to the addendums.
Well, we didn't get to the bucket.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
You said my bucket list.
Right, but I thought the publishing of the...
Well, yeah, well, that's on the bucket list.
Oh, okay. I got you. So, little oversight.
But I'm not going to go out and get the bucket just yet. Okay, now you want to.
Okay, so I want you all to know that I did not write this question. This is straight from Myrt. What did I do as a young teenager that was rather devilish and naughty?
Yeah, I thought, well, listening to all this, you might think I'm pretty prissy, but I'm not really. And so when I was a teenager, now you have to know that, you know, I'm a young girl being raised in Chicago in a mixed neighborhood. There were all different nationalities in this neighborhood, all kinds of children. And it's in the 30s. And so Halloween comes around, and when we're teenagers, and we go out in little gangs, and there were a lot of apartment buildings that were built in our communities. You know, it was originally a community of small homes, no homes, then small homes, and then suddenly apartment buildings. And so the apartment buildings had panels of doorbells, and we could put a pin in the doorbell and make it ring for a long time. So we'd put those in there, and then we'd run away and hide. And then, so that was one thing. The naughtiest thing we did was tip over garbage cans. But then we would call, we had telephones then, you know, I mean, they were wall telephones, but they had nice names like Ratcliffe 50501 and Triangle 40406. But those were my and Bob's numbers. But we would go randomly to telephone book and call someone and say, this is the public light company. Yes. Well, are your street lights burning? And they would go and look and come back and say yes. And we would say, well, please go and blow them out. Now, you know, I was thinking about where that came from, blowing out the lights. Well, before we had electric street lamps, I think probably just a few years before I was born, there were lamp lighters that went around and lit the lamps. But anyhow, I know that was pretty naughty, right? I mean, I don't think my kids did anything like that.
Thank you, Myrt, for sharing with us. And I think you do need to tell some of the other stories at Coffee Time. They're very special stories.
I love the Instacart story.
Yeah, that would be a good one to tell.
You don't know it, do you?
Yeah, you told it to me.
I did tell it to you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
It's about forever stamps and red pears.
There you go. Well, we were going to use it, and she gave me that story, you know, when we first talked, and I said, okay, tell me the story, and the story took 22 minutes to tell. So I said we would either have to edit it or leave it for, you know,
Yeah.
coffee hour. But it's a good story, and it's one of those rainbow moments that she's talking about.
Yeah, no, I can't reach it. Okay, thank you.
So thank you so much, Myrt.
Thank you.
You